gingerbread kitchen. A couple of years ago I made some gingerbread men and most of them got eaten, but one of them is still living in my kitchen. So this year I thought I'd make him a gingerbread house and at least stop him living in my cupboards.
Hey, Heisenberg.
Hey Jesse, what's up?
Did I hear you say you are going to make me a house?
There's not much gets past you, is there? Would you like me to make you a gingerbread house?
That would be sweet.
Well, let's take a look at the ingredients. So for this gingerbread house, I've got 700 grams of plain flour, 250 grams of golden syrup, or you could use light molasses, 200 grams of sugar, 250 grams of softened butter, 2 eggs. Here in the spice tray, I've got 4 teaspoons of ground ginger, 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, and half a teaspoon of cloves. And finally, yes?
Are we like cooking you?
Well, yeah, but not in the sense that you're thinking. We're going to bake your house.
That's cool. Proceed.
Cream the butter and sugar together.
Whoa!
Beat in the eggs one at a time.
Boss. Must tell Skinny Pete about this.
Now add the golden syrup. Then sieve in all the spices, salt, etc. and the flour. Then mix with a spoon. And then your hand. And eventually you'll get this soft dough. Now put it in the fridge for a couple of hours to harden. After a couple of hours the dough should be firm. Remove the dough from the bowl and press it together. Then cut in half. Sprinkle a surface with flour and roll one half out to about 5 millimeters thick. Now I'm going to use a template to cut out 2 sides of the roof.
Say, Heisenberg, where did I, come from?
Well, I made you from a dough exactly like this one.
No way. So you're like a god or something?
No, but a bit of respect now and again wouldn't go amiss.
Word.
Then I'll carefully transfer these to a baking sheet lined with greaseproof paper. These need to be baked at 180 degrees C fan oven, 200 degrees C normal oven for 10 minutes. Now while the gingerbread is still warm, it needs to be trimmed to make the edges neat and square. Do you want some, Jesse?
Do I look like a cannibal?
Fair point. Now I'll roll out the rest of the dough and cut out the back and one wall. Now I'll press the scraps together and use this to cut out the front and the second side of the house. And I'll bake these in the same way. Halfway through baking you can pop some boiled sweets into the holes to make the windows. Then carry on baking. Then when they come out, you've glazed your windows. Now when you've trimmed all your warm pieces of the house, leave them on a wire rack to cool. Well, it looks like Jesse's gone to do some business with his homies, so I can carry on in peace. So to stick it together I need some Royal Icing, and I've got 250 grams of icing sugar and an egg white. Pop the egg white in a bowl and just give it a whisk for 10 or 15 seconds. Now add in the sugar a spoonful at a time and beat it in. Of course, the more sugar you add, the thicker it gets. And when all the sugar's been added, you'll end up with this lovely thick icing. Now I'm going to be a bit unconventional because I want the cement for my walls to be pretty much the same colour as the gingerbread. So I'm going to take a goodly blob of the Royal Icing mixture and I'm going to add in a tablespoon of cocoa powder. and mix. So what I've got now is a nice thick brown icing mixture which I can use to stick the walls together. So I've got a cake board which is bigger than the house, so I can put a front garden in. And now I can assemble the house, but you've got a choice, because you can either have the flat side facing outwards or the bubbly side facing outwards, and it's your choice. I'm actually going to have this flat side facing outwards because the texture reminds me a bit of the house I used to have in France. So I'll spread a little bit of the icing on the underside just to stick this to the board. You don't need much. Then I'll spread some icing on 3 sides of one of the side walls, 1 long side and 2 short sides. The long side will go down onto the board. And then there's just the back wall to put on. It's cool. Now to attach the roof by putting some icing carefully on the walls. And now I can drop on my roof. Now depending on how runny your icing is, you may just need to hold these in place for a couple of minutes, stop them sliding off. Then when you're happy, you can fill in this gap on the top with a bit of icing. Then I can work on tidying up these edges. Finally, I'll just fill in some gaps on the corners here, make it a nice airtight house. Okay, well, I think we're looking quite good here. It's all sealed all the way round. So now what I'm going to do is leave this to set overnight. Last thing I need to do is put my leftover icing, white icing, into a bowl. Then I'll cover it and pop it in the fridge until tomorrow. I'm just melting 4 or 5 squares of dark chocolate in a bowl over a pan of boiling water. And I can use the chocolate, paint it on with a brush to render the outside. Gives a really nice texture. Oh, I'm quite pleased with that. Now on these exposed edges here, I'm going to use these long thin chocolates because they make a lovely log effect. I'll just put a few little blobs of the icing that I made earlier and then pop it into place. And I'll do exactly the same thing on the back side of the house. I'm also going to use these chocolates to make some window sills for the windows. Now for the roof, I've got about 250 grams of white chocolate buttons. And I'm actually going to tile my roof, again, just using blobs of icing to secure the buttons in place. I'm just letting them overhang the edge of the roof line. So that's one side of the roof done, and you can see along the top I've put a row of half buttons. Now to do the other side. So that's both sides tiled. Now on the top here I'm going to put some more of my chocolate logs. Again, I'm just using a few blobs of icing to hold them into place. And that's the top done. And these edges here, I'll tidy those up with some logs as well. That's neaten things up a bit. Now to put some shutters on the windows, I've coloured some little bits of fondant icing that I had left over from my Christmas cake, and I'll just pop them into place. So I've got my shutters on the windows. I've put an extra pair of shutters up here so that it's like if there's a window there with the shutters closed. I've put some fondant icing on the door and popped it into place. Now I'm going to use a toothpick here, and the idea is simply to create a wooden effect, like there's slats of wood in the shutters. Well, that's the house finished. Now I need to do the grounds. So what I've got here is a cup of icing sugar with 1.5 tablespoons of water to make a thickish paste, and I'm just going to use a palette knife to spread it on the board, make a kind of snow scene. You don't need to worry too much about smoothing it out, it'll sort of flow itself reasonably smooth anyway. And if you want to, and you're really careful, you can put a little layer of snow just on the windowsills. Oh yes, we're looking nice and snowy now. And now to finish off, I'm just going to dust the top lightly with icing sugar. Well, I reckon that is pretty good. Say, Jessie, come see.
Dude, this is awesome, but there is one tiny problem.
What's that?
The door might be a bit small.
Well, you'll find a solution. Anyway, I've got a little surprise for you because I used some leftover dough to make you a gingerbread girlfriend to keep you company at nights.
What is that? It looks like E.T.
You're no looker yourself, fat boy.
Fat boy, I love it. I can see you two are going to get on just fine. I'll leave you to it, shall I?
Oh my G.
Well, it certainly looks as though Jesse's made himself at home. Not sure I'm going to get much peace and quiet from now on though. Thanks for watching, and do join me next time in the bread kitchen.